However, there's another big story out of the States, but it has implications and broad ones here in Canada as well. Deals with this conservative podcaster named Stephen Crowder, who's been brought to mainstream prominence when a doorbell video, one of these Ring videos that are ubiquitous, caught him upbraiding his pregnant wife, some say abusing. So what would that mean in the event of divorce proceedings? We've got a family lawyer joining us to tell all. Laura Paris is a lawyer with Schulman and Partners, joining us on the Oakley Show at 640 Toronto. Laura, good to have you on board. Good afternoon.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me.
So an audio or an audio-visual recording could play a role in family court. Is that true?
Absolutely. So, it all depends on the type of recording, who's in the recording, and what the recording is actually showing. But definitely any sort of video or audio recording does have the ability of being presented as evidence within a family court proceeding.
How would it be contextualized?
So, using the example of this podcaster for, as a reference, if this recording would be relevant if the parties have children, for example, and the wife is alleging that the father has some propensity of being abusive, whether verbally or physically, and believes that is going to have an impact on the best interest of the children. So a recording of this nature, for example, would demonstrate that there is perhaps a history of the father being verbally abusive towards the mother at a time, when she's in a vulnerable state because she's pregnant. That may not directly correlate to his ability as a parent, but in connection with other evidence, if there was other evidence showing that he also had a history of being verbally or physically abusive towards the children, something like this could be absolutely relevant and would be evidence that would be used in conjunction with each other to show that this is a concern with this father, and maybe there should be some limitations with respect to his parenting.
Laura, how do we make the distinction between, say, what constitutes verbal abuse and just a spousal argument or disagreement?
So it's very difficult, and that's where we say that, this recording alone, in my view, wouldn't be enough. I think that this is one piece of a puzzle, and it would have to be shown in conjunction with several other pieces to actually show that this is more than just a heated argument between spouses that perhaps aren't getting along. I think the family court is very live to this. Oftentimes, when in family court proceedings, these are times that you read some of the worst things or hear some of the worst things about yourself, and that is to be expected. You're dealing with two parties that have obviously chosen to separate for a reason, and it's not always an amicable separation. So there is absolutely an expectation amongst family lawyers, family judges, to expect that you're going to hear some sort of, bad things about each spouse, and it's a matter of doing these kind of fact-finding missions and seeing, what actual evidence is there to support this, to determine how it plays into the issues and whether or not it's relevant.
Yeah, you use that word evidence. So how do we determine its admissibility as evidence in court?
Right. So the kind of the technical way of looking at this is it's what's called its probative value versus its prejudicial effect. So what that means in more layman terms is we want to look at the facts. So in this circumstance, this individual wasn't aware he was being recorded, but could have been aware due to the fact that it was a Ring security, doorbell that he maybe installed or was aware was there. So in terms of whether or not, he would probably make a defense to say, well, I'm being prejudiced by this due to the fact that I wasn't aware that I was being recorded, so my privacy is being impeded on. That would be the potential prejudice that he would face in this case. The probative value would lean on how critical is this evidence in deciding the issue as it relates to parenting. So, like I said, in this situation, I would say that probably it would be admissible, this specific recording, just because, again, it wasn't taken in a surreptitious fashion. He should have or ought to have been aware that there was a possibility that recording was being recorded, but I don't think it would hold a lot of weight unless there was more evidence showing that this is his character, and again, that this relates directly to his ability as a parent. Because other than that, in at least in Ontario, something like abuse would really only factor in for the sake of relationships with the children, and then the co-parenting relationship.
But these are things that a judge would have to rule on, right? It's a subjective call.
Absolutely. And this is where you see family law matters kind of dragging on, because by the time you actually get before a judge who is going to make a call on the admissibility of this, it's often you don't see these determinations happening until you reach the point of a trial. And not a lot of family law cases actually go to a trial. So often these recordings come up, our clients will bring them to us, and we kind of keep them in our back pocket saying, maybe if this does ever end up in trial, or, a serious motion in some circumstances, but for the most part, you see it come up at trial. If it ever does come up, we will bring it up at the trial so that admissibility can be determined. Because other than that, you don't usually have that opportunity of having the admissibility determined prior to a trial.
Right. So in the case of two people, if one person knows that they're recording, but the other doesn't know that they are being recorded, it's still legal, but not necessarily admissible as evidence in a court here in Ontario.
Exactly. And that's where, again, you're weighing the value of this. Like if it was a video, for example, of a parent beating a child, and they weren't aware in that moment that they were being recorded, it's pretty obvious in that situation that a court's not going to be too worried about prejudicing the, abuser's privacy, and they're going to be more concerned about having the appropriate evidence available to make sure that these children are protected.
It's an interesting case study, as this viral video of Stephen Crowder, who's the conservative or right-wing podcaster, has now gone viral. Laura Paris is a lawyer with Shulman & Partners. Thanks so much for explaining all. Thank you, Laura.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. We got the news upcoming. On the other side, several interesting stories from